Hello and welcome to another War Thunder video, and well, this is the Republic P-43 Lancer. For those of you who have gotten your 7th Mark of Distinction for the Operation Summer event, this is what you have unlocked. And well, I cannot say it was really worth the wait, at least as far as realistic was concerned. So, first, in arcade, and I have had quite a few games with this thing in arcade, and none of them were really all that spectacular, or at least they didn't really show off too much of the plane. Most of them was just basically me sitting at altitude trying to knock down bombers ineffectively. So, how is this thing in arcade? Well, it is about average for the speed for its tier. It's 2.7 in arcade, 3.0 in realistic, right now at least. It has a pretty good roll rate in arcade. It is very maneuverable. And the climb rate in arcade is pretty much terrible. 20 meters per second climb rate in arcade at 2.7 is pretty bad. Not only that, but the armament is very, very weedy. Only 4 50 caliber machine guns. And this is a 3.0 plane in realistic, 2.7 in arcade. And it only has 4 50 caliber machine guns. This is not a very well-armed aircraft for the American tech tree. Also, it has only 200 rounds in each of its 4 guns. So, no, this thing does not have a lot of endurance. And yes, those of you who are looking up at the timer, this was a 50-minute long match, and no, I'm not going to make you sit through all of that. So, how is this thing in realistic? Because, of course, this is where I'm flying it, and I'm going to be flying, I think I'm going to show you 2 matches of realistic and then probably 1 of arcade. So, the realistic matches first, and, well, I've had quite considerably more time with this thing in realistic than I have in arcade, because my opinion of this thing in arcade is pretty much hard set. But, and also in arcade, it's very easy to get this thing to do very well, because the maneuverability is so good. I mean, you really don't have to worry too much about this thing in arcade. It can pretty much look after itself. At least in terms of the maneuverability standpoint. In realistic, on the other hand, to be quite frank, it's not very good. And I really don't want to say it's not very good, because honestly, I really want to like this plane. I mean, it's the predecessor to the P-47, and it's the closest thing that we have to the piece of shit that was the P-35, so the Seversky P-35, and honestly, the P-35 was a pile of shit. And of course, the P-35 is what the P-43 is based off of. And then the XP-41 was developed in tandem with this. Yeah, I got that wrong in my first video. I said that this thing was developed based off of the XP-41. No, the P-41 was developed in tandem with this thing, the P-43. But the P-43 was selected to be the next frontline fighter, so yeah. Head on with a Chaika. I don't know why he was stupid enough to do that, and died for it. However, he has knocked out my oil cooler and has damaged my engine. Now, the P-43 in realistic does not overheat very badly at all. In fact, it's very difficult to overheat this plane, even with a damaged radiator. The engine does not the engine is very susceptible to damage, but it does not die very quickly. It does take quite a lot of pounding to actually knock the engine out. But, well, the biggest problem with the P-43 is its damage model. I don't know if this is historically accurate or not, but the P-43, as of right now in realistic, cannot take damage at all. As you can see, by just having a light orange left wing, my plane is already listing heavily. And this is not going to bode well for me later on in this match. There is somebody from the RAAF clan and a Golbachev's Yakovlev 9M on the enemy team that we're going to be seeing quite a lot of. And shoot extremely poorly. I should have killed this guy, and I should have also smacked into the ground here. Fortunately, I didn't. So yeah. Killed the Yak-1, so that's my second kill, and currently I am very low on ammunition, and I want to get home and patch my radiator and get a new engine. And also, yeah, this plane right now is listing with that little damage to the wing. Yeah, this thing lists. This thing does not take damage at all. It is a very fragile aircraft, and pretty much any hits to the wing in realistic will destroy this thing's maneuverability, as we will see later. So, landing the P-43, very easy. One thing I should say is that the flaps have a very, very low rip speed. It's somewhere in the vicinity of like 250 miles an hour for the combat flaps, and for the landing flaps, I think it's somewhere around 200 mph, whatever that is in kph. And, well, for those of you who are wondering, I am now the only player left on this team. The two Spitfires behind me crashed on landing, and the Buffalo that was left alive on our team has just been shot down by a Yak-7. However, the Yak-7 is going to crash. It was a Yak-1, excuse me. The Yak-1 is going to be shot down shooting at ground targets, or is going to crash shooting at ground targets. And that will leave the only thing that will be left is the Yak-9M that I said earlier, and a Yak-7B. And the Yak-7B isn't what we're interested in. It's the Yak-9M that we're interested in. So, just kind of climbing up to altitude right now. Trying to get something under my wings. And by the way, since I am moving at 4 times normal speed, this is what this thing is actually climbing like. This thing does not have a very good climb rate at all. In realistic, it is 13.7 meters per second rate of climb. The turn time isn't bad. The turn time is only 19 seconds, but the climb rate is horrible. Another thing is that the speed, this thing is very, very slow, especially in a straight line. And I'm actually not climbing all that aggressively here. I'm only climbing at around 5 degrees. If you put this thing into a climb above, with an angle above 5 degrees, it will struggle to maintain 180 miles an hour. This thing, the phrase energy retention does not exist with this plane's vocabulary. It does not retain energy at all. It does not climb at all, and there's the wreck of the Yak-1 up there. So yeah, it doesn't retain energy at all. It doesn't climb at all. The only thing that it really does well is turn. And it doesn't dive very well either. The max dive speed for this thing is something in the region of like 450 miles per hour. That's when you get to the red line. I really do not advise taking it over that speed, because this thing will lock up in a dive at around 350 to 360 miles per hour, and it locks up heavily in that dive. So this thing, to be quite frank, it's not a very good plane. Not by any stretch of the imagination. The only thing it does particularly well is turn. It is very maneuverable, and it does very maneuverable, especially at low speed, which we're going to see here in a bit against the Yak-9M. Everything else about it is just horrible. It doesn't retain energy, it's slow. The roll rate in realistic is pretty poor, with the exception of high speed, which you're never going to see in this plane. It locks up at a pretty low speed. The flaps have a very low red line. It doesn't have a lot of ammunition. It doesn't have very many guns. And what guns it does have, honestly, I do not really like the placement of the guns, the 2 in the nose and 2 in the wings. I'd much prefer to have 2 in the wings, or the 4 guns and 2 in each wing, rather than 2 in the nose and 2 in the wings. Just to make the shooting a hell of a lot easier. So yeah, the roll rate in realistic is pretty poor. The red line for the flaps is very low. The red line for the wings overall is very low. It's slow. It doesn't climb. It doesn't retain energy. Really, the only... well, no, there are 2 good things about this plane. For one, very good low-speed maneuverability for a plane of its size and weight. And right now I'm actually trying to run home to try to get back to the cover of the base flak, because I actually don't know where this guy's friend is. The Yak-7, I don't know where he is. And we're going to see him in a couple of minutes, but first we're going to have a little bit of a tangle with this Yak-9M. And so yeah, the only real 2 good things about this plane is the maneuverability, especially at low speed, and the fact that this plane really does not overheat at all. The engine, you really have to abuse the hell out of your W key in order to get this thing to overheat in realistic. The engine and oil tolerances are very, very high for this aircraft. And actually, another relatively good thing about this plane is it's small. It is actually a very small aircraft. It's about the same size as that Yak. So yeah, that's a good thing. But yeah, with the exception of the engine and oil tolerances being very high and the maneuverability being very good, it's just not very good. It's not a very good plane outside of those 2 categories. And, well, I'm actually having to kind of tap the aileron every now and then in this turn to keep the plane in the knife edge. Throttle back to 0, try to throttle back a little bit. I'm trying to get this guy to overshoot. And Not going to get the guns there, so bring it back over. He brings it over as well. I'm trying to keep this guy in a scissors. Unfortunately, he's not going to cooperate. He doesn't want to get into a scissors. He knows he's going to lose. And there's the Yak 7. Just bring it around ever so slowly. Neither of us are going to get guns there. He turns away. He's trying to lead me towards the Yak. Or to his friend, rather. I try to get a snap there, but it didn't work. The Yak 7B comes through and shoots extremely poorly. No, that guy was not very good. In fact, he did not get a single air kill this entire match, that China #1 guy. This RAAF guy, on the other hand, he is on 2 kills, same as me. Level it off, roll it back the other direction and dive. I'm keeping an eye on the Yak 7 as well as the Yak 9. I'm much more worried about the Yak 7. He has much more guns and is fully loaded and fully repaired. Gets a clip into my elevator. Yak 9 comes through and gets a clip into my fuselage, but, well, nothing critical. Throttle back. Get a clip into the Yak 9 there. Yak 7 is RTB. He's actually out of ammunition. He basically just used all of his cannon ammunition and jammed his 50 calibers on me. So yeah, he was not a very good pilot. Either that or he was just very new. And of course, the reason why I'm actually maneuvering so violently, the reason why I'm actually able to pull all of these turns inside of this Yak 9 is because I'm actually using the combat flaps. The combat flaps are very good for this kind of maneuvering. Because of the relatively high rip speed, or relatively low rip speed for the flaps, I'm actually capable of doing all of this turning while keeping the flaps down and relatively under control of the plane. So the Yak 9's running away. He's actually trying to come back and he's trying to break away to get a better angle on me. So I decide to take this time to go and kill the Yak 7 on the runway. Unfortunately, he crashes on landing and the ground forces cap. So I wasn't able to get that kill. But, of course, that's one less plane for me to have to worry about. And now it's just me and this Yak 9. We are the only 2 people left in this entire match. And something I don't know at this point in time is the Yak 9 is actually very, very low on ammunition. He is very close to running out completely of his cannon ammunition, and his 50 cals are not too far behind. So deploy the flaps, trying to turn inside of him. I'm not going to do it in time, so I pull back completely on the throttle. And he's out of 20mm ammunition. That was his 50 cal. So I've taken quite a bit of damage to my rudder. My wing is shot to shit, and I've taken damage to one of my ailerons, although it's not critical. And there you go. There goes the 50 cal. He's completely out of 20mm right now. He is just running on 50 cal, and he does not have a lot of 50 caliber ammunition left. And in fact, in not too long, he's actually going to put in all chat, because we were actually talking to each other in all chat. That he's completely out of ammunition. He has enough fuel to keep this engagement going, but he's completely dry. His ammunition is completely gone. Not right now, but very soon. We'll go into the vertical, and none of us managed to get guns on each other. He managed to get guns on, but not a good enough burst. I take damage to one of my fuel tanks there, not like it's all that big of a deal. Take a pop at him, get a hit, but nothing critical. Drop the flaps again and pulled them back in because yeah, there you go, 160 miles an hour, and actually I had to pull them back in because that was the red line for the flaps. And if I had not taken any damage to my wing right now, I would have killed this guy. I am having a lot of trouble right now keeping in these maneuvers because of the damage to my wing. And that is not very critical damage, right, by the way. That damage is not all that bad. In fact, that kind of level of damage would, on a P-47, be minimal at best. I mean, you would not have to worry about that at all. And on this Yak-9 that I'm dogfighting, that level of damage to the plane overall, it wouldn't be any problems at all. He would not have any trouble maneuvering. And I ask him in all chat if he's out of ammunition and low on fuel, but he's not. So he's just running away right now, so I'm going to take the time to try to come over here and knock this Yak-7's pilot out just to get the assist. Yak-9 turns back around. We go head on. I already know at this point that he doesn't have any 20mm left, so I'm not too afraid of going into a head on with him. Drop the flaps. We're both turning in on each other. None of us managed to get guns on there. He goes vertical. I just pull it out, trying to get it underneath him. Level out and point my wing towards him. And he hits my engine. Unfortunately, he is completely out of ammunition. And he could have killed me, and the Yak-7 pilot bails out. So, yeah, the Yak-9 could have killed me here, but unfortunately, throughout our little engagement, he has completely run himself out of ammunition. And he's about to put in chat that he's out of ammo, and I'm going to turn and get a repair and a rearm. Thankfully, the ground units capped this runway, and I almost put the plane into the ground there. And currently there are less than 20 minutes left of this match. There's actually not a lot of time left in the match. As you can see, only 18 minutes and 40 seconds and counting down. So, flying along for now, waiting to see where he is. And at this point, the two of us are just kind of talking in chat about the P-43, and I'm basically telling him that it's really not worth getting. And the Ki-94 is probably a better bet. So, since the two of us left, and, you know, he's being such a good sport in chat, I asked him if he wants a fair fight, and, you know, because he wants to get out of this match as quickly as I do, and it's because, I mean, there's hardly any time of this match left, and as you can see, it's been going on for 45 minutes and counting. So, we want to get this match over with, but you know, we want to continue this dogfight. We've been having a lot of fun with it, so we want to go ahead and we want to have a fun fight, but we want this over with. So we decided to meet up at Grid Square F10, and I tell him what altitude I'm at, and he finds me, and we start this dogfight again. So, I drop my flaps in this turn. I've got my wingtip smoke on this time. And of course, it doesn't really matter that I've got my smoke on. I mean, this match is over. Whether or not one of us dies, this match is over. We're the only two people left in the match. So, pulling him into a scissors. I want to keep this scissors going, because I know that I can win in a scissors fight. Point the nose up, trying to lose a bit more speed. Throttle back to 0. Keep the flaps down. And he pulls out in front of me, but pulls back in. Pull back to about 50%. Throttle back up. And just keep the turn. Keep in the turn. He points his nose down at the ground. I follow. And this guy had never faced one of these planes before. This was literally the very first time I think this guy has ever seen one of these things. Of course, I've seen Yak 9s before, and if you've been playing War Thunder for any period of time and you haven't seen a Yak 9, then obviously there's something wrong with you. Either that or you just don't know what a Yak 9 is, unless you've literally just started playing the game. I mean, the Yak 9 is like something, I think it's like 3.0 in arcade, and I think 2.7 or 3.0 in realistic, so I mean, it's a pretty low BR. So, keep going through the loops, and it was pretty obvious that this guy, he didn't know what to do. And here we are on a mixed battle for the second and last match for this review of the P43, and yeah, unfortunately there wasn't a lot of people for the matchmaker to choose from, or for the matchmaker to throw into a match when I was playing this, so yeah, unfortunately I got a mixed battle. But whatever. So, this match basically, I'm not going to say it was the match that basically told me this isn't really worth playing anymore, but it was the match that told me this plane doesn't need to be at its BR. Like I said at the start of the video, this thing in realistic has a BR of 3.0 and does not get an air spawn. Now, if it is going to stay at 3.0, I think personally, if it is going to stay at 3.0, it needs an air spawn. It absolutely 100% needs an air spawn of at least 1,000 meters. Maybe more, depending on what... maybe more, but at the very least, it needs an air spawn of at least 1,000 meters. Just because it has no climb rate at all. If it doesn't get an air spawn, then I think this thing should be 2.3. 2.3 or 2.0. Because this thing is just not good enough at its tier. And no, this Typhoon pilot was a complete idiot. I do not know what the hell he was thinking, even though this is not the most... This may not be the fastest plane in the world, but neither is the Typhoon. So yeah, that was an easy kill. But the P-43, if it's going to stay at 3.0, like I said, it needs at least a 1,000 meter air spawn. And that's even after it goes back to the runway and lands. It needs at least a air spawn of 1,000 meters. If it's not going to get its air spawn, then it needs a BR of 2.3. It needs a BR reduction, because this thing is just not competitive enough at 3.0. And honestly, even at 2.3, it might need an air spawn of around 500 meters. Just to counteract that absolutely terrible climb rate. BF-109F4 here. And I want to like this plane. I really do want to like this thing, but it's just terrible. It is, well, no, it's not terrible, but it's not good. I mean, the only reason why I'm about to kill this BF-109 is because he was already engaged with somebody else. And he was at a much lower altitude than me, and had much lower... He didn't have as much energy as I did. So that was a pretty... this was never going to end well for him to begin with. And his engine is dead right now, dead or dying, and there we go, just kill this pilot, put him out of his misery. So I want to go after this Ki-45 this SM-79 right here. Unfortunately, there's a BF-109, E7, a Japanese BF-109 right there. Goes head on and blasts away with his 20 millimeters. And I decide to turn on to this guy instead. There is another enemy BF-109 that you can see over there in the distance, but he is about to crash. I think his engine was shot out by the AI IL-2s that you can see over there. So BF-109 is turning back in. Turn into him. And there we go, he hits my fuel tank, and it hits my wing again. And this is just not going to help me at all. Gets another clip into my other wing, but no, nothing really critical. And this is basically where I ended up killing myself. He's not going to kill me, but I am going to get the kill on him, but there is a hurricane that is closing in, and he's the one who finishes me off. Like I said, I am going after the hurricane killed me, there was a BV-238, that was all that was left on our team, and he crashed. He lost control of his plane and died. So the P-43 is... I really want to like this thing. Honest to God, I really want to like it, but it's just not very good. And really, I hope to God the Ki-94 is a hell of a lot better than this thing, and it probably will be, because, I mean, the Ki-94 is going to be Tier 4, this thing's only Tier 2. And there's the Hurricane. And there we go. But this thing, if it's going to stay where it is, it's going to need an air spawn. And honestly, I don't see Gaijin giving this thing an air spawn, but at the very, very least, it needs a BR reduction. Yeah. Honestly, I think Probably the best thing for this plane is to get a BR of 2.7 and a 500 meter to 1,000 meter air spawn. If not that, then a 1,000 meter air spawn at a BR of 3.0, and then if not that, then it needs to be BR 2.3 and may or may not get an air spawn. If it does get an air spawn, probably somewhere between 250 and 500 meters for the air spawn at 2.3 BR. But honestly, I really hope it gets a BR reduction, because this thing, it's just not very good at its current BR. It's too slow. It doesn't have enough firepower. It doesn't have enough ammunition. It doesn't have the climb rate. It doesn't even have enough guns, really. It just overall, it does not have the performance to stay at its current battle rating of 3.0. And really, this thing needs, if it's not going to get an air spawn, then it needs a BR reduction. Probably 2.0 at the lowest and 2.7 at the highest. With obviously 2.3 being ideal. But this thing isn't a 3.0 aircraft. And honestly, until they do something about this plane's BR, I really don't recommend flying it outside of arcade. And in arcade, it's perfectly fine. In arcade, it's pretty maneuverable. It's not very fast, but I mean, speed in arcade is kind of a relative term at this tier. And it is a BR of 2.7 for those of you who want to know in arcade. The climb rate is pretty poor, 20 meters per second in arcade. I mean, that's pretty bad. But it is pretty maneuverable, and that's really that's really where it counts in arcade. In realistic, it's just not worth flying. It doesn't have enough ammunition. It doesn't have enough firepower. The ground attack capabilities for this plane are pretty limited, seeing it doesn't get any external ordnance at all. No rockets, no bombs. And it's just a really it's just not a very good plane at all. It's not bad, but it's not good. It's not even mediocre, really. Honestly, if I was going to say anything, if I was going to pick one plane at 3.0 that was mediocre, it'd probably have to be the Sea Hurricane. And, well, no, the Sea Hurricane's a bad example. The Hurricane is a pretty piss-poor plane overall. Probably a mediocre plane at 3.0 would probably have to be the E-model BF-109. Either that or maybe even this thing. And, well, this is just not a good plane at all. But, well, I am going to go and complete my Operation Summer tasks for today. And, well, yeah, I don't think I'm going to be flying this thing very often, at least outside of arcade. I'm not going to be flying this thing in realistic until they reduce its BR. So, yeah. For those of you who have ground out to this thing, and for those of you who are looking forward to it, I highly recommend just kind of glazing over this thing and going for the KI-94 for now. And yeah, that's really the best I can say, is that, well, what comes after this thing is the KI-94, so... yeah. I think that's enough of this, and I'm gonna go get my task done for the day.